G'day so-and-sos and welcome to my sewing room. If we haven't met before, my name is Kathy and I have a fun bag for us to make today. So I'm really proud of this one. I designed this, I drafted up the pattern and then put it together. So if you're going to make it along with me, go to the description box and I'll have a link to the pattern there as well as the extra measurements that you'll need to cut out. If you don't want to use the hardware, that's fine, just leave it off. So this bag, I just love it. I just love it so much. Had so much fun. She's got shoes. She's got purse feet. And then she has a recessed zipper, which opens nice and wide. And then we have a split pocket, a split slip pocket in there as well. And then on the front or back, whatever it is, we have another slip pocket. And then on the other side, we have that lovely split panel, which shows off that gorgeous fabric. So get all your pattern pieces cut out and ready. If you're unsure of how to tape together the paper pattern pieces, then keep watching because I'll show you how to do it. Okay, let's get cracking. Let's have a look at what we'll need for today's project. So over here I have my usual cutting tools, snippers, rotary cutter, scissors, good cutting mat and some acrylic rulers. Then I have some pins. You'll need a lot of clips. I have an air erasable pen, something to turn my work out and some double-sided sticky tape. Then I have some rivets, 6 purse feet and 2 1-inch strap ends and the screws. And then I have a piece of 12-inch zipper tape with a zipper head. Now, if you don't have this hardware or you don't want to use it, don't worry, just leave it off. It'll still be fine. I'll just remind you of where to sew instead of using the rivets. Let's have a quick look at the pattern pieces. So there will be a link in the description box to my Google Drive, which will have all the pattern pieces there for you. Now on them, I will have typed out what each one is, what fabric you need to cut out of it, what interfacing you need to cut out of it. Now all of them, except for the split panel piece, you'll need to cut out 2. The split panel piece, you'll only need to cut out 1. The reason we cut out 2 is because we're going to stick them together to make the full pattern piece. So you can see on one of the ones that I've cut out, I've just left that extra strip of paper along the side there. And that's just to give me something to sticky tape onto. So with one of the pieces, I'm going to mirror it, which just means flip it over and then stick it on top, and that will make our whole piece and sticky tape it down. If you're a bit unsure, in the next segment, I'm just going to go through all my bits as they are cut out, but I will have them very clearly labeled for you. Let's have a quick look at my interfacing and fabrics. So I've got some Decaville light, some buckram, some light interfacing and some fusible fleece. If you don't have access to Decaville light, just use a medium interfacing. Then I have some vinyl, then some cotton woven. The blue is going to be my outside pocket accent piece. I might use the green for the backing on that pocket, and then the pink is going to be my lining. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my pattern pieces together and cut all these out, and I'll go through it just really briefly in the next segment just to make sure you've got everything cut out right. Let's quickly have a look at all my pieces before I go and interface them. So all these pieces here, you'll have the measurements for in the description box. So make sure you write them down and then you'll have the link to cut out all these ones. So first of all, I have my zipper tab. It is 3.5 inches by 2.5 and I have light interfacing. Then I have my zipper panels. They are 10.5 by 2.25. I have 4 pieces of fabric and then 4 pieces of light interfacing. I have my handles. They are 22 inches by 4 inches and I have cut out 2 of those. Then I have my gusset pieces. My gusset pieces are 32.5 by 4.5 inches. I have a piece of vinyl and a buckram to go with that, a piece of my lining fabric and light interfacing to go with that. Always test your vinyl first, and when you interface vinyl, have it right sides down with your interfacing on top and apply heat from this side very carefully. Then I have my pattern pieces. I have my stabilizer, which is Decoville, and I actually found a piece of Decoville heavy. So if you do have a piece of Decoville heavy, that might be good. Then I have my main pocket pieces. These are the bits on the outside. I have my main accent piece and fusible fleece with that one. And then I have this green that I'm going to use for the lining with light interfacing for that one. Then I have my split panel pieces. Now, when you cut these out, make sure that you are mirroring one piece. So one piece will be like that, and then you'll flip your pattern piece over to cut out the other side. So I'm using a piece of vinyl and a piece of my main accent fabric. You mix it up however you want to. Also, these ones you'll notice are a little bit bigger because they have a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then I have my interior pocket pieces. I have 2 pieces of my lining fabric and 2 pieces of light interfacing. Then I have my main panel pieces. So I have 2 pieces cut out for the lining, 1 piece cut out of vinyl for my front that my pocket's going to sit on top of, 2 pieces of light interfacing for the lining, and then 2 pieces of buckram. One is for that vinyl, and then the other piece is for the split panel pieces once I join them together. And then finally, I have my main panel interfacing, which is Decoville Light. So I'll interface my main panels with that buckram, but then this is a slightly smaller piece that I'll put on top of that, centered, that will just give it that bit more structure and shape. So I'm going to go off and interface all of my pieces now, and I will show you when we get back. This is what I have so far. So all of my lining pieces have light interfacing except for my front accent pocket, which has the fusible fleece. I haven't done my split panel pieces yet because I need to sew them together. I have my main vinyl piece. It has the buckram and then the Decoville. Now, I'm happy with having the Decoville in my side seams because I have an industrial. If you want to trim down that piece on the sides for your machine, then that's fine. Might be a good idea. And then with my gusset, I have my buckram, and then I have found my centers of my gusset, marked the centers of my Decoville, and then ironed that on centered. So let's get to this bit. What I'm going to do now is take my split panels over to the sewing machine. I'm going to place them right sides together and clip them down. And then I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and join those 2 pieces together along this long edge at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. While I'm there, I will then open it up, fold that seam under towards the vinyl, and then top stitch it down at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so I just want 3/8 of an inch because we need to make this the right size. So I've shortened my stitch length to 3.5. And just a nice even seam. Now while I'm here, I'm going to open it up, finger press that seam towards the vinyl side, and I'm just going to top stitch that seam down at 1/8 of an inch. So nice and close to that fold, and I'm top stitching, so I'm going to lengthen my stitch length, back stitch just a little bit because I don't want a big line. And just lay a nice even top stitch down that side, making sure that seam stays over towards the vinyl side. Now I can take this over to my iron and put that interfacing on this piece. So there we go. That's all our pieces cut out and interfaced. Our split panels are put together and we're looking good. That is a big part of the bag already done, even though it's still all in pieces. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to look at doing now is putting my handles together, and then we'll look at shaping the gussets. Let's get these handles done. So I've got my handles, a long ruler, marking tool, tape, and some clips. So one at a time, flip it over so it's wrong side up, and then I will find the halfway point, which will be 2 inches, and give myself a line. And whack some double-sided tape on there. Now, if you're using cotton woven for this part, you'll just be able to iron it. There we go, get rid of that. And then just fold in my first side to that halfway point, that line that I made. Now, as always, I'm being careful not to swipe across my vinyl. I just want to press because I don't want to stretch it in any way, because vinyl does have a stretch. Other side. Now, because I've used double-sided tape as well, when I'm done doing this bit, when I'm finished sewing, I'm going to use an alcohol wipe to wipe off my needle so it doesn't have any of that sticky residue on it gumming up my machine. Okay, fold it in half again, being careful to line up these edges because we're going to be sewing along this folded edge as close as we can get to that edge, and I want to make sure that I'm not falling off and that I'm hitting both sides. Now when I sew this as well, I will start at one end, so this end, I will sew all the way down, and then instead of zipping across the bottom and coming back up, I'm actually going to start back at the same end for the other side. And that will minimize my handle doing any sort of silly buggers and twisting on me, so it'll sit a little bit nicer. And again, that's just because vinyl has stretch. You also want to make sure that your stitch length is nice and long as well. That will help and it will look good. So do this to both of your handles and then we'll take it over to the machine. So I'm starting at that folded edge. I'm trying to get as close as I can, and my stitch length is around a 4.5. Little back stitch there, and then just carefully lining up the side of my foot with the side of that vinyl. So that's what I'm watching here at the front. I'm not watching my needle. And just all the way down. Now, like I said, I'm just going to back stitch, and then I'm going to take it out rather than going across the bottom. I'm going to make sure that I'm starting on the same side of my vinyl and starting at that same end. Now this will just help it not to twist as much. Like vinyl is always going to get a little bit of a twist in it, but you just want to do everything you can to minimize that so that your handles or your strap look and sit as good as they can. So I'm going to do the other one exactly the same and see you back at the table. Okay, let's shape up these gussets. So I'm going to start on my outside one. I'm going to flip it over so it's wrong sides up. And then I'm going to measure 1 inch in from the edge. So I'm using my cutting mat here and I'll give myself a mark there. And then measure in 1 inch from the other side, across there. So 1 inch there. Then I'm going to measure down 11 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Give myself a mark at the bottom of that 11 inch mark like that. Then I'm going to grab my rotary cutter and my long ruler, line up those 2 marks and cut that away. Just like that. And then other side. Now if you haven't changed the razor in your rotary cutter for a while, then I would encourage you to do it. So you don't have to apply too much pressure and there's less risk of you cutting yourself. There you go. So that's what our gusset will look like. So I'm going to do that on both ends and then I'll do it on my lining piece as well. And I'll see you back here in a moment and we'll put these purse feet on. Okay, we're going to put these purse feet on. Now I just marked it up, but it's too many. I don't like that. So we're going to do it again. So ignore those purple marks, I'm sorry. So I'm going to lay my ruler 1 inch from the edge of this decoville. And I've got the 6 on that center mark that I made. So I'm happy with that mark. I'm going to make a mark there. Then I'm going to measure 2 inches to the right and then 2 inches to the left. So I just want 3, not 4. I'm going to flip it around and same thing. I'm going to line up my 6 with that center mark and measure 1 inch up from the edge of my decoville. Give myself a mark at the 6, measure 2 inches this way to the 8, and then 2 inches that way to the 4. And then I have 6 black marks, and that's what I want. Then I'm going to grab my seam ripper, poke it through carefully, and give myself the smallest little cut. Now I can always go back and make it bigger if I want to. But it's better to start small and have to go bigger than the other way around. We want her shoes to fit. And this one. Sorry if you can hear that groaning. It's my dog Elvis. He's a groaner. So if you're having trouble seeing where your mark is on the other side when you turn it over, just pop your seam ripper through like that. So that gives you an idea of where your hole is. And open it up. Okay, I'm going to pause the camera and put the other 4 on because you don't need to watch me do that. And I'll let you go do yours and I'll see you back in a moment. There we go. Now make sure that your prongs are going along the length of your gusset and preferably not the other way. They're not long enough to sort of get caught up in your seams or hit them with the needle, but just to be safe. And there you go. She's got shoes. Let's put this interior pocket together. So I've got both my pieces and I'm going to place them right sides together And I'm going to give myself some marks at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches will be plenty. And I'm not going to sew along that bit. That's going to be my turnout hole. And I'm just going to clip all these edges together, and then we'll take it over to the machine and we'll sew all the way around there at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just leaving this hole at the top. Okay, I'm going to shorten my stitch length back down to around a 3.5, and I'm going to start at the top near one of those marks I gave myself. And I want to be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That looks good. Now I'm going to go up to this corner. I'm going to stay a little bit further than a 1/4 inch. Lift my presser foot, 45 degrees, drop 1 stitch, or maybe 2 stitches, and then around. Just to angle that corner a little bit, just to make it easier to turn out and kind of not so lumpy when we do turn it out. So it sits a little bit nicer when we attach it to our lining. And around the curve. And then we'll do the same thing up here. Get a little bit closer, turn it 45, give myself a couple of stitches, and then up to our turnout hole and back stitch. There we go. Now I'm just going to clip these corners where we did that angle stitch, get rid of that extra fabric there. And then I'm just going to clip along my curves, just being really careful not to hit my stitch line. And that will just help it sit a little bit better when we turn it out. And this side as well. Because even though it's on the inside and it's in the lining and it's down the bottom, we still want it to look good. Just good practice. Okay, let's turn it out. And I've got my iron heating up as well. Poke those edges out, poke the curve all the way out, and then that bottom corner. Let's give that a hit with the iron before we take it over and close that hole. Oh, I forgot to mention, this fabric is from Tula Pink. So another great fabric designer. Okay, make that nice and flat. And I'll take that back over to the machine and just top stitch just along this top edge to close that hole. Pumpkin fur everywhere. At a nice 1/8 of an inch. So I'll just lengthen my stitch length back to a 4.5 and a nice 1/8 of an inch. And just lining up the outside of my foot with the outside of that fabric. There we go. Now we'll take it back to the table and pin it to the interior piece to attach it. Okay, let's look at attaching this pocket to our interior piece. So the first thing I want to do is find my center on the top and bottom of my interior piece. So just fold it in half and just give yourself the tiniest little triangle snip. So I'm going to fold that in half and give it a crease just to be sure I'm getting it perfectly centered. Just like that. And then I'll whack some pins in there to hold in place. Now I'm going to make this a split pocket as well. So if you want to, use a ruler and a marking tool and just give yourself a line down the center. I'm pretty confident that I can see that crease mark, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Now I'm going to start at one of these corners, sew around the edge and attach it to that interior piece. Then I'm going to start down here at the bottom and sew up that crease line. I don't want to sew down because it'll bunch up. So I'm top stitching, so my stitch length is 4.5, and I'm going to start at one of these corners at a 1/8 seam allowance. Sorry, a bit extra lispy today. Now I want to stay nice and close to that edge. So I'm just lining up again that foot with the edge of the fabric. Careful around the curves. Zip across the bottom. And around the curves. And back up. Now if you're wondering about this machine, I did a little review, just a little tour really, on all my machines the other day and put that video up. So if you're curious about it at all, you can have a look at that if you like on my channel. While you're there, like, subscribe and do all the YouTube love. Okay, start down at the bottom where I can see that crease. Backstitch a little. And like I said here, I want to start at the bottom because that'll sort of push my fabric up nice and flat. If I start at the top and sew down towards the bottom, by the time I get to the bottom, I'll have a bit of a bunch up there. I don't want that. Too easy. So there's our pocket sewn on. Let's pop this one to the side, and then I'm going to grab my other pocket pieces, my exterior pocket pieces. Then I'm going to do the same thing. Going to place them right sides together, give myself a turnout hole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 inches is plenty. Whack some clips on him and do exactly the same thing. Take it over to the machine and sew that down at a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to shorten my stitch length back down to 3.5. Start at one of my turnout holes. And again, I want to be about a quarter inch seam allowance and backstitch nice and well. So on this one, I'm not going to do that angled stitch because it is quite a sharp corner of that pocket, and I kind of want it to stay like that. But if you want to, then that's fine, of course. I have no problem with people changing up any of my patterns any sort of way that they want to. It's fun to make your bag your own. So if you think you've got a better idea of doing something, then go for it and leave me a comment and let me know, because, you know, great minds come together, and I might like your idea and try it out next time. I want to do an extra stitch there, but that's shifted on me, so that corner's going to be a little high. And then backstitch. Too easy. Let's go turn this out and have a look. Nip away some of that extra fabric at the corners. And same thing, just give these bottom curves a little clip. There we go, and turn it out. Love this fabric. I've been hoarding it for so long. Might just grab something to poke those top corners out with. So like I said, it's a Tula pink fabric, and she's got some really, like, just Great colours. She's got just such an excellent use of colours. And I just love her stuff. I've only made one other bag out of this fabric, and I think I used the pink one maybe. And I made a bag for a friend of mine. I'll see if I've got a photo. If I can find a photo, I'll pop it up. Poke those corners right out. So I'm just going to give this a bit of a hit with the iron, fold down that turnout hole that I want. And then same thing as what we did with the other pocket. I'm going to take that over to the machine and top stitch along this top curve at 1/8 of an inch to close up that hole. So we're top stitching, so I've lengthened my stitch length to 4.5. I'm going to start at one of those top corners and needle in my work, little back stitch, and off I go, staying nice and close to that edge. And I'm stitching from my blue side because that is my outside piece. So you want to be having the piece that is going to show facing up and stitching on that edge. And just take your time with top stitching. You want it to look pretty. Back stitch, done. Let's have a look at getting this handle in place. So I've got one handle, my big front panel, my small ruler, some double-sided tape and some chalk. So I'm going to find the center of this panel top. So fold it in half and give it a little snip. Just like that. And then I'm going to measure, I'm just using my grid on my mat, going to measure 2 inches in either direction from that center snip. Just like that. Just give it a little mark and pop that to the side for a minute. Then I'm going to find which is the right side of my handle. The stitches will just look a little bit different, so you should be able to tell. And I'm going to measure down on the right side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.5 inches, and just give myself a little chalk mark. And then this end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5, and a little chalk mark. I'm going to grab some tape and I'm going to pop it over, and I'm just going to put tape on the bottom 3 inches. And again, I'm just using my grid on my cutting mat to measure that. And then this end, so I'm putting the tape on the wrong side of my strap. 3 of my handle, 3 inches. Like that. And get this backing off. One side. Careful not to stick it to my table. The other side. Cool, being very careful not to stick that to my table. Grab my panel, grab my strap. Now that 5.5 inch mark that I made there, I'm going to line it up with that 2 inch mark and tape that down. And then the other side, find that 5.5 inch mark, line it up at the top where that 2 inch mark is. So my handle is, the inside of my handle is touching that 2 inch mark. And press that down, and then I'll whack some clips on there as well to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Then I'll grab my ruler and I'm going to measure 3 inches up from the bottom of those handles and just give myself a little chalk mark on both of those handles. Now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch up, across at that mark, back down and across on both of those, being careful they don't shift around on me. So let's go do that. You might need to put a heavier needle in your machine because that's a few layers now. So if you need to change from a 70 to a 90 or whatever you need to do, make sure you do that. So I'm going to lengthen my stitch length because I'm top stitching, so up to a 4.5. And I will start along this bottom edge. Make sure that foot is down and back stitch. Now I want to try and line up my stitches so they're going pretty much along the previous ones, just so it looks a bit neater. Up to that 3-inch mark that we made. And across. I'm going to shorten my stitch length because I can see I just need a little bit to get on top of those stitches, and then lengthen it again. And then down this side. And back stitch at the bottom. Cool, now the other side. Now if you did watch my video I put up the other day about this machine, you'll see me going through 16 layers of this vinyl, which is pretty impressive. So I had a much heavier needle than this one in. So it's always important to make sure that you're using the right needle for the job that you're doing. It will make life so much easier. There we go. And down this side. And that is one of our handles sewn on. So there's our handle stitched down. Now I'm going to grab my exterior pocket and I'm going to place that over the top. I've got a few millimeters on either side, and that's fine. It'll all get caught up in the gusset seam shortly anyway. So we don't want too much bulk in that seam. So I'm going to take this over to the machine and just baste this down at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And then when we do the gusset, we'll be going a little bit further in and holding that down again. Okay, my stitch length is around a 4. That up out of the way. And I'm nice and close to the edge. And back stitch on that corner. Now, if you go around and you miss a little bit and it doesn't quite catch your back panel piece, don't worry too much about it because we're just kind of basting this thing in place for the time being. When we attach the gusset, our gusset will have a seam of around 3/8 of an inch. Hard to say with a lisp. So it will catch it all the way around then. So for now, we just want it to stay put. Done. So there's our handle all sewn on. Pop that one to the side. Now I've got my other exterior panel, my other handle, my strap ends, my screws, and my little screwdriver. If you're not using rivets, then you will sew this in place in a minute. And if you're not using strap ends, then just make sure you have sewn across the bottom of those. Now what I'm going to do is take this handle and I'm going to measure 17 inches across my handle, give myself a chalk mark and grab my scissors and chop. Scary. Grab one of my strap ends, figure out which is my right side. I think that's my right side. And pop my strap end on there and grab a couple of screws. Now, if you haven't used strap ends before, they really look nice. They just give that elevated quality to your work. And these I got off Temu as well. But with these, they are exactly the same, I think, as the ones that I have gotten off more expensive sites. So it definitely makes it worth it, because they used to be, before I found them on Temu, used to be very expensive. And if you're selling your bags, it just adds that extra, $5 at least to your costs. So these ones I'm happy to get off Temu, and I've used them on a couple of bags, and then I've worn the bags and sort of seen if they tarnished or if they sort of peeled or anything like that, and so far so good. So some hardware on there is hit and miss. Like the picture will look good, it'll look thick and solid, and then when it arrives it's thin and tinny. So you just really roll the dice. I should have just bought heaps more off the Black Friday sales off Amazon and stuff. Okay, on. That looks good. But first I'll mark 3 inches on my strap. 3 inches on that end, using my grid to measure 3 inches up from the bottom on that end. And I will pop some sticky tape, just a little square really, of sticky tape about 1/2 inch up, because I actually don't want it too much there. And about 1/2 inch up from the bottom. Remember, if you have used tape on the other handle, especially, to clean off your needle. Okay, so finding where the 2-inch marks are on my grid, I'm going to line up my strap at that 3-inch line and lay it down. And same thing on the other side, and lay it down. Now, if I did my math right, both of our handles from the top along this bit will be 11 inches. So before you rivet or sew yours down, just have a look and make sure that your handles are the same length at the top of the bag. If they're not, just adjust it. Just bring these up or down a little bit to make sure that your handle is the same as the other one. Now I'm going to grab my rivet press. If you're not using a rivet press, take it over to the sewing machine, measure 1/2 inch up from the bottom of your strap or your strap end, and sew yourself a little 1/2 inch square to hold them in place. Okay, I got my rivet presses, I've got my rivets, and I've got my other panel ready to go as well. So I'm going to measure up from the bottom of my strap 1.5 inches, and I can see where my center is and give myself a dot. Same on this one, 1.5 inches from the bottom, find the center and little dot. Now I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to measure down from the top this time, 1.5 inches, and give myself a dot. And then this side from the top, 1.5 inches in the center and dot. Cool. Now rivets, 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 rivets. Okay. So I've got my hole puncher, pop that under, give myself a hole. And then the other side. So I'd usually have a more interesting camera angle for this one, but I am waiting on some new tripods. This one. So if you are just sewing, then that's fine. But if you haven't bought a rivet press yet, I'd really encourage you to do so. And I always say that, but they are just so good. And like I was saying with the strap ends, hardware just really elevates your bag. So I'm going to pop my rivet through the hole from the front with the long end going through. And these are 8mm by 8mm posts. And then this one, pop that on, just hold it in place for a sec while we get them all on. I'll get these on. Okay, now grab my one with the press in it. And of course you don't need two of these cam snaps. They were cheap on sale and I thought, why not? Because it saves me swapping over the die when I'm filming. Give it a little press. You'll feel it sort of click in place. You don't want to press too hard because then you'll get a big dent in your rivet. And no one wants dented rivets. Make sure it's seated. And there. And there is our handles on. Now we're going to put our zipper panel together and we're going to start with our zipper tab. So I'm going to pop it up right sides down and along the length of it, I'm just going to fold in about 1/4 inch on each end. Then I'm going to, going to fold it in half, give myself that crease mark in the middle, and then just fold it in to the middle to that crease mark. And then carefully, because it's hot apparently, fold it in half again. Just like that. Now I'll find which end of my zipper tape is the closed end and I will pop that on the end and whack some clips on it. Now for you really, really eagle-eyed people, you might notice that I'm now using a different piece of zipper tape than what I had in my intro. And that's because I already did this bit, but so what happened when I did this bit, I used the zipper that I originally chose, but as I was opening and closing the zipper to get the head out of the way while I sewed the panels on, I noticed that the paint started coming off some of the teeth, if you can see down here in the beginning. So if you spot these zippers on Temu, don't bother. Okay, gonna take that over to the sewing machine and sew that down. Okay, so I've got my stitch length at about a 4. I don't want it too short or too long really. And I'm just gonna start along this bottom edge because I wanna make sure that zipper tape does not move on me. So I want it nice and pinned down. And then I'll just go up around all 4 sides. And just whack another stitch in there and back stitch. Done. So there's the zipper tab done. Now let's have a look at these panels. So I'm going to grab one of them and I'm going to draw a line at 1/4 inch along one of the short edges, then along one of the long edges, and then the other short edge. Just like that, just 3 sides. Then what I'm going to do is grab my ironing mat and I'm going to fold up those sides onto the line and iron them down. Just like that. So go ahead and prepare all 4 pieces just like this, and I'll see you back here in a moment when we're all done. So that's all my pieces ironed down. Now what I'm going to do is grab my zipper tape, going to pull that head as close to the end as I dare, and grab one of my blue pieces, because this is going to be the piece that I want to see from the outside of the bag. I'm going to find the edge that I didn't iron and I'm going to place it right sides together, so the top of the zipper to the pretty side of the fabric along the top edge of that zipper. So the furthest edge away from me, so all of the zipper tape is underneath that fabric, and whack some clips on there. Now I'm also going to mark, before I forget, 1 inch, or probably, sorry, 3/4 of an inch up from that zipper head end, and I just used my grid to measure that. Okay, and another clip there. Now flip him over and grab one of my green ones, and same thing, I'm going to find the edge that I didn't iron and place it on top of my zipper tape so it covers the width of the tape, and shift my clips. And then I will match where that line is on this side, because we're going to do the butler method. Okay, let's take that over to the sewing machine, and we're going to start from the back end of the zipper, sew along, and we are going to stop when we get to that line and do the butler method. If you haven't done it before, don't worry, going to show you. Okay, I'm shortening my stitch length to around 3.5, and like I said, I'm going to start at the tail end of the zipper, so the end where the tab is. I'm going to make sure that those ironed bits that I did on the end are folded up. They haven't come undone. And off I go. And I'm feeling where the teeth are with this finger. And I'm just going to sew up to that 3/4 inch mark that I made. I'm going to get this zipper head out of my way. Fold down those ironed edges, make sure they're staying in place. And I'm going to open up that zipper tape. So down to that mark, lift up my presser foot, pull that little bit of tape out. Make sure my ends are nice and matched evenly. You might need to shift it around a little bit. And carefully continue sewing down that line, and then backstitch a little bit at the end. And we have successfully done the butler method on that. How pretty does that look? Okay, so there's our first bit done. Now what I'm going to do is fold those over so they are wrong sides together, and we can see that pretty fabric. And I'm just going to iron it all back into place and iron down along this top edge of the zipper. Get it ready for top stitching. And then I'm just going to clip it all together. Cool, then we're going to take that over to the machine and we are going to top stitch around all 4 sides. Okay, I'm top stitching, so I've lengthened my stitch length to around a 4.5. And I'm going to make sure that I'm stitching on my top side. So that blue side is going to be my outside. So make sure you have your work with the zipper facing up, the right side of the zipper, so that your stitches are the prettiest on this side. And just simply go around all 4 sides, just making sure that you're catching both those bits at the bottom. So all of that hem, maybe one more stitch there. Up, and then along this top bit, we want to make sure that we're nice and close. So around 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to lift my presser foot, move that head out of the way, making sure you don't get any metal near your needle. And then nice and slow over where the rest of that zipper tape is underneath there. Beautiful. So there's the first side done. Now I'll grab my other pieces and bring that zipper head up to the top. Grab this piece and place it right sides together. So pretty side to pretty side. And just get that lined up as best I can. And then same thing, pop him over and my green bit, right sides together. And just lining that up as best I can and just shift those clips to include that piece as well. Okay, and same thing, over to the sewing machine. I'm going to start from this tail end. Going to mark 3/4 of an inch on both sides. So I'll do that butler method there too. Off we go. Okay, so remembering to shorten my stitch length to around a 3.5, starting from the tail end. And I'm making sure both those folded edges are folded over still. And backstitch, feeling where the teeth are with my pointer finger. Going to move that zipper head in a sec. Lift up my presser foot, move that zipper head down out of the way. And I can see that this fabric is shifted forward just a little bit. So I'm going to find where that zipper disappears in there and have my stiletto there, so I know where to stop. Pull that tape up, fold that bit down. Oh, I've got just enough. And over. And backstitch. Let's have a look. Okay, so there's my second zipper panel bit done. Now, same thing, I'm going to give that a bit of a tidy with the iron. So I'm going to fold those pieces wrong sides together so the outside has the pretty bits. And give that a bit of an iron and then clip it ready for top stitching. Okay, I'll take that back over to the machine and we'll do the same thing, just top stitch around. So I'm going to lengthen my stitch length back up to that 4.5 because I'm top stitching. And start on this back end side, back stitch a little. Just making sure I'm catching both those bottom edges. I've actually got all my clips on the right way today, which makes life a little bit easier. I've usually got them upside down. And up this edge. Got that. And then across the top. Over that bit of zipper tape. Move my zipper head out of my way. And all the way along. Done. So there's my new and improved zipper panel piece, and I'm quite happy with that. Now, I have my 2 lining pieces. I'm gonna grab one, work on one at a time. I've got the center snip there, and I'm going to measure down from the top 1.5 inches. And I'm going to give myself just a little chalk line, maybe 4 inches or so long. And then I'm going to grab the other one and do the same thing. So from the top edge, 1.5 inches down, and just give myself a chalk line. Just enough for me to be able to see it. Then I'm going to grab my zipper panel piece. So I'll give it a little crease, fold it in half, give it a little crease mark on those edges. Okay, now I'm going to line up my crease mark with that center mark and line it up along that line. So have a good look at how I've got it. So most of the zipper is hanging up over the edge. And then I'm just going to whack some clips in there. And it's right sides together so I can see the back of my zipper panel piece, which for me is that green that I've used because I want the blue at the top. So you want this bit to be right and look good. Like that. Then I'm going to grab my other panel and place it above, get my zipper panel and slide it over. So I'm going to make sure my lining ends are matched up as well. And the bottom of this panel is lined up with that chalk mark. And then whack a couple of pins in there. Okay, now we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we are just going to sew along those long edges at the top and bottom. So make sure that you're happy with how everything is sitting. If you fold it over like that, that's what it will look like once we're done. So make sure you've got the zipper facing up. Cool. Let's take it over to the machine and do that bit. Okay, so I'm going to shorten my stitch length back down to 3.5. And I'm just going to pretty much sew over those existing stitches from where we top stitched, maybe just a little bit to my left, so a little bit inside. So you can't see them when we open it up. Just nice and slow. This bit isn't a race. And back stitch. Remember to back stitch because this bit's going to get a bit of pulling on it when we open and close our bag. And then this end. Back stitch. Now I've got a crazy frog in my backyard and it's been really noisy, so I hope that's not Well, kind of might be cool if it's showing up on camera, if you can hear it. But it's raining today and this frog is absolutely going off. He's loving life right now. Okay, and backstitch there. And that is our zipper panel done. Let's go have a look. Okay, there is that done. So our zipper panel piece is in, and that's what it looks like from the top. I'm loving this so far. Now we're going to look at attaching our gusset to our lining. So what I'm going to do is find the middle of my gusset and give myself some center snips. 1, 2, and then along the bottom I can see on this side where my center is because I've got those stitches, but I'll just give myself a little snip on this one. Cool. Now when you put your gusset on, you might find that it is longer at the top, and that's fine. I wanted it to make sure that I had enough room, and better to be longer than short. So because of that, it's really important that we line up our centers and we start clipping with the center and center. So I've opened up my lining. I should stop talking and actually let you see what I'm doing. So I've opened up my lining and I'm going to find the middle on the side where my pocket is, because on this side we're going to leave a turnout hole. So we're starting on the side with the pocket. I'm going to place my gusset face down, so right sides together, with my center snip at the center, and whack some clips on. You'll need lots of clips for this, so if you've left all your clips over at the sewing machine, now would be the time to collect them. Then I'm going to grab my scissors, and around these curves I'm just going to give myself some little snips. Not too far, about 1 millimeter, and about the same distance apart. And that will help curve up around the edge. And then keep clipping around. Now the lining part is not too hard because the lining fabric is of course a little bit softer than when we do it with the vinyl. So it's good to do the lining first and just sort of have that practice doing it. But when we get to the vinyl, if you find that you're having a really hard time getting it to sit in place where you want it to, you can actually grab a stapler and along where the clips are, whack a few staples in here and there. But then you have to be really careful not to sew over them and take them out at the end. Okay, and this side. Then once we get this all clipped up, we are going to take it over to the sewing machine and sew it at about 3/8 of an inch. And we are just going to, for now, leave the ends a little bit longer at the top until we do the other side as well. And for heaven's sake, remind me to leave a turnout hole on the other side, because I'm terrible at forgetting to leave a turnout hole. Okay, let's go over to the machine and sew this bit down. Okay, I'm going to shorten my stitch length to around a 3.5. And I'm going to actually start along the bottom at the center and go up along one side, and then I'll start back at the center and go up the other side. And the reason I'm going to do it this way is because as you sew, the fabric is going to shift around a little bit. So, and I'm at 3/8 of an inch, in case you've forgotten. The fabric can shift around a little bit. So if I started at one end and then just started working around to the other end, I might find that the bottom of my gusset shifts way too much to one side or the other, and I don't have that nice wide bit at the bottom that I want. So I'm going to lift my foot and just move my fabric around to get as little bunching as possible around these curves. Now, because it's the lining, it doesn't matter too much if you've got a few little bunches in there because you're not going to see it, but this is good practice for when we do the exterior in a minute because we want it to look sweet. So being really careful to move that zipper tape, that tail out of the way, being mindful of where I finish. I can feel it, so I'll backstitch. Okay, get that stuff out of the way. And then I'm going to start at the center again. And backstitch. So it's a little awkward sewing this way. It sort of feels like you're sewing with your non-dominant hand. But we'll manage. I'm just shifting that fabric around. Hope my hands aren't in the shot too much, sorry. Lift that up. So just take your time and unbunch it. No one likes bunches. And up this side. So if you have a look here, this is a great example. Have a look at where my clip is there, and you can see how I've got that bunch of fabric there. That's where it's all sort of shifted and moved up a little bit. So it goes to show how much your fabric can sort of move around on you, and that's why it's a good idea to start in the center. Just be careful to get the other lining piece out of the way so you're not sewing over anything that you don't want to. Cool. There is one side of our gusset sewn in. So just have a little feel and make sure that you caught it all the way around and it's all good. Cool. Then we are, oh, you know what I'm going to do is mark on here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Give myself a mark there and a mark there. So I'm going to make that bigger. I'm going to give myself, looking at my grid, I'm going to give myself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches there. So there's my turnout hole. Cool. I'm going to fold my bottom lining piece up to meet that gusset. Find my centers and clip. So same thing, I'm going to give myself a few little snips around that curve on the gusset edge to help me get around. Okay, and then start clipping. So make sure you use more clips than you think you need. It will just make life a bit easier. I'm trying to think of what side I'm going to have up at the sewing machine for which way I lay my clips, but I don't know. I can't see it in my head. I have to wait until I'm over there and physically see it. But if you know, then have your clips up that way so they're easier to pull off as you go. I'm just hedging my bets. I got some up one way and some up the other way. Hopeless. Okay, and then up the other side. So always make sure that you start from the center when you're clipping as well. For the same reason, you want that nice wide bit of our gusset along the bottom and even along the bottom. And then same thing, back over to the sewing machine and start from the edges of our turnout hole, which I'm going to mark on this side as well, so I don't forget. Otherwise I'll get carried away and I'll get yakking and I forget. So we'll start at one end of our turnout hole, up that side, and then start at the other end of the other turnout and up that side. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to start in the center, and I'm actually going to have the lining side that I'm sewing on up. So the gusset is down. So I'm really going to have to make sure that it is folded all the way under and I'm not sewing over anything that I don't want to. But you start from the side, whatever side works for you. I just feel that I can get the bunching a little bit better from this side. Okay, so a good 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And remembering to backstitch. And up and around. Tucking everything under. I'm using this hand to feel where everything is. Get that zipper tape out of the way. All the way up and back stitch. Okay, now this time I'm going to start from the gusset side so I don't have to have all that underneath my machine. And just shift around as much as you need to. And up this side. And then that is our lining all done. So there's our gusset all attached. There's the inside of our bag. Very cool. And my turnout hole. So pop that piece to one side and then grab our exterior gusset and our exterior pieces. Very exciting. Now, before I get started attaching them, I'm just going to go ahead and give myself some little snips along all four edges. Just be careful not to go too deep. So just about a mil, just a little bit to help us get around those curves. Okay, hopefully that will do. All right, so let's grab our piece with the pocket. I'm going to fold this piece in half and grab my pen and just give myself a little mark on the back where my center is. I'm going to lay this piece right side up, place my gusset on it so they are right sides together and my gusset is overlaying the bag. It's not down here. I'm going to mark up the center snip that I've got there that I made earlier with that center mark I just made and start clipping. Now, all the clips, as many clips as you can get on there will make your life easier. You do not want it sort of moving around on you or popping off at the sewing machine. And like I said, if you're really, really struggling to hold it in place with whatever fabrics you used, you can use a stapler. and whack some staples in there. You just got to be super careful not to hit them when you're sewing and to remember to take them out at the end. Now this curve, and again this one is going to be longer at the top, and that's fine. We're going to snip it off at the end. So you sort of want to make it sort of stand up a little bit, if that makes sense, and then get your clips on there. So if this is the first time you've made a bag with a gusset and it's driving you mad, that's normal. It is, they are a really nice way of bag making, but they are also a little bit fiddly, but so worth it, especially with that recessed zipper. So my regular watcher subscriber that suggested that, Bundy, good idea, because I'm having fun doing this one. Okay, around this side. Again, stand it up. And stand it up. Just make sure those edges are nice and lined up. So once we have this clipped, we'll take it over to the machine, and again a good 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and just feel with your fingers for everything underneath as you sew. We want to catch the edges of that pocket. Cool. Let's go do that. Okay, with this bit, I'm actually going to start at the top because it's much less likely to shift around on me, and it'll be easier for me to go all the way around. So making sure I'm at the top, and 3/8 of an inch. And I'm sewing from the gusset side up, so I can feel where that pocket is, and I can hear it as well. So I can hear that I'm catching that pocket, which is what I want. So nice and slow. Now we get down to this corner. So I'm just going to shift it around a little bit. Now you might be tempted to get your fingers in there. Don't. Use a stiletto or something. You just don't want to get your fingers in there and accidentally bump your go pedal and risk getting a needle in your finger. Now I've got a really big bunch there. There we go. So if that happens to you, just try and shift it down and around and minimize it as much as you can. So I don't want to let it shift too much, because then my center marks are going to be off. So a good example of, being really careful of getting your fingers too close to the needle. I mean, you think, I'm smart, I know when I've got my foot on the pedal. I was sewing one day and I was doing something up here. My fingers weren't too close, but my slipper fell off my foot and hit the foot pedal and made my needle go. And I would never have thought that would have happened in a million years. So if you've got your fingers near the needle and something like that happens, or the bloody cat walks over it, that has happened. And around that corner, and just keep lifting your presser foot and pivoting a little bit and just shifting that fabric around. And just take your time. If you get impatient, then you're going to get bunches. Cool. So far, pretty good. Okay. I can hear that I'm getting that pocket, which is what I want. And then all the way up. And back stitch at the top. Cool. Okay, there's our first panel sewn on. So just have a quick look and just be comfortable that you've caught it all the way around. That pocket is nice and in. Cool. Now let's grab our other panel. So I'm going to have this one with the panel right side up, and I'm going to pop the other panel on top. I'm going to find my center mark, which will be my seam, and the center on the gusset, where I made that center mark on the decoville. And same thing, start clipping them together. Lots of clips. This side would be a little bit more of a challenge just because we're now going to have so much bag under our sewing machine. So make sure you use plenty of clips. And if you need to, you can even put some snips in the panel side if you want to. Just don't go too crazy with them. So I'm going to have my clips almost touching each other. I'm going to use that many. But it will make life easier. It will make for a little bit of slow sewing over at the sewing machine. But I want this to look nice. I've spent too much time on it today to rush this bit. Cool. Okay, almost there. So take this over to the sewing machine and same thing, 3/8 of an inch. And then after this, we can put them together. Okay, I'm going to start. I've got the lining side up. So my gusset is down. And 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so I'm going to sort of hold my bag up to support it and support that weight so it doesn't pull on it as much as I can until I get down to this curve anyway, because then I'll need both hands for that, I think. A little bit higher camera angle too, so you can see and I'm not shoving my hands in your face. around. So I can sort of feel for puckers with my fingers on the other side, and I'm flattening them out as I go. It would have been better for the puckers if I'd sewn from the other side, but that would have been a little bit too hard with filming. I can feel there's a pucker there. So I'm going to lift, smooth that out underneath. Careful to keep my fingers away. And keep going. Now I'm going to let it sort of curve the way that it naturally wants to here, because that might be helpful. And if you need to, just go a few stitches at a time. You'll get there. And there we go. Cool. Okay, there's our exterior piece all done. Now, scissors. I'm going to just cut across carefully that extra bit of gusset there. Being very careful to make sure that that is level with my lining. And then I'm going to trim it down this lining a little bit, this edge, so I don't have so much bulk in my sides. Now, this is a lot. It's a lot to cut through, so sorry, I just stopped talking then. Oh, goodness. So don't use your really good fabric scissors because it will blunt them. But you want something that's still a little bit sharp, or you'll be here all day. Cool, that's one side, and this other side. Just be really careful not to get too close to your stitches, because at this point that would suck. We are in the home stretch. And this is always my favourite part. Not this bit. Cutting these seams down sucks. But turning it out and putting the two pieces together is always fun. Okay. Cool. A little bit more down this side. Just makes your bag sit a bit nicer. Especially on this chunky side where that pocket is. Oh, goodness. It's going to make my hands hurt, isn't it? Oh, muscles. Okay. Now we are going to turn this piece right side out. So just grab somewhere. Just going to make sure those purse feet are all good. Okay. Now, grab and flip this out. Oh. Okay, almost. There we go. How good does that look? Run your fingers all along that gusset and poke it out really well, that whole seam, and just make sure that you haven't missed anywhere. If you've missed, turn it out, go back, do it again. Nice. There we go. Very nice. Okay. I am going to sit here and just roll my seams out a little bit and get them sitting nicely. And then I will start recording again and we'll put these pieces together. Okay, got those seams rolled out where I want them to, and she's looking fine. Now, grab my lining. And my lining is still inside out, so it's the wrong sides out. I'm going to open that zipper all the way up and make sure that's sitting right. And take my exterior and put it into my interior. So the side that has the pocket is going on the side that doesn't have a pocket on the lining. So those sides will be together, if that makes sense. Doesn't matter if you don't, like, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's just how I prefer to do it, not to have the pockets on both sides. And give that a shake. Okay. Now I'm going to pop those handles down out of the way and pop those zipper panel bits down out of the way, and that zipper. You don't want to get that caught up in our top seam. So clips again. Start at my centers. So the center of my interior and the center of my lining, and clip that and whack a couple of extra. And just make sure that zipper panel is pushed down out of the way. You don't want to get it caught up. And then this side, push that zipper panel down, push that handle down, find my centers of my exterior and my lining, and whack a few clips there. And I didn't trim off that excess gusset from the lining. Doesn't matter too much. Just take it across. It's going to get all sewn up in a minute. And then I am just going to clip all the way around. Now, same principle as with the gusset. Same principle as with the gusset. The more clips, the merrier. It will make our life easier, and it will stop that fabric shifting around, because it's a little bit of a tight squeeze for that exterior bit to be in the interior bit. So we have to squish it in and make it work. So with these side bits, what I want to do is find the seam of my exterior gusset and match it to the seam of my lining gusset. So those two seams line up. And just keep pushing that zipper panel down out of the way, because it will creep up on you. And then this side, line up those side seams there and there. and clip all the way around. Now take it over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew those two pieces together at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I love this bit. Just go nice and slow. See you there. Okay, triple check that the camera's on because we don't want to unpick this bit and do it again. And I'm going to start up on one of those gusset seams and I'm going to be sewing from the inside of the bag, but you do it however you find most comfortable. If you've got a domestic machine, it'll be good to wrap this around that free arm. Okay, shorten my stitch length to a 3. We want nice close little stitches. And I have to go a bit further and then back stitch off that seam. Okay, open it up and now I'm going to feel with these fingers and make sure that that zipper panel is down out of the way, my handles are out of the way. I don't want anything getting caught up. And I'm also watching to see if I can see just a little bit of that pink lining all the way around, because these guys are going to want to pull away from each other because it is such a tight fit. And I swear my dog waits until I'm doing something that I really can't stop doing until he goes to the door and looks at me like, get up and let me out. But he is going to have to wait. Lift up that seam, poke it under and over. So don't be surprised if a massive wolfhound cross staggy pops in the frame in a minute, because he's likely to come over and look at me up close because I'm not getting up and doing his bidding. Fold that bit down. Okay, so around to the other side. And again, I'm feeling to make sure that nothing that I don't want popping up into that seam. Now I can feel a lot of bulk under here, so I'm just going to check and make sure that is all folded down. I learnt this lesson the hard way the very first time I did a recessed zipper when I was first learning bag making. I was making a bag for a girlfriend's birthday and I didn't check where that zipper panel was and I got it all caught up and had to unstitch it all, unpick it all. And I cried. But that's okay. It taught me a lesson to always check, didn't it? Fold this seam down slowly. And over this one. And back around. I won't say too easy this time. Okay, there it is. Now, this part, I am going to trim down this top bit a little bit. So, and as I do it, I'm just going to make sure that I caught both pieces all the way around. Just want to trim it down a little bit. And it's a good chance just to double check. So if you did miss any, then back over and fix it up. And it happens. We all make mistakes. And you just go back and do it again. Okay. Right, now. Okay, Hope you had your wheat bix, because now we are going to pull that out through this hole very, very carefully so nothing rips on us. Squish it. And squish it. Squish. Okay, oh, whew. There, it's just getting that bottom bit out. Okay, cool. Whew. There we go. Awesome. And that is all going to sit right. Yes. Now we're going to clip this turnout hole. So I'm going to stick my fingers in the sides of that turnout hole and just give it a gentle little pull and whack some clips along there, and take that back over to the machine and sew up that little bit. Nice, easy bit, something easy to accomplish. Let's go do that. So around 3.5 stitch length, pop it under, and I'm going to start further up than what I think I need to, just to make sure. And back stitch. I just want to stay nice and close to the edge. So around 1/8 of an inch. And just nice and slow, making sure that I'm catching both sides. And just make sure you haven't got any bulk underneath there and you're not catching anything that you don't want to. Let's poke that up. A little bit further than what I think I need to go. And back stitch. Now would be a good time to check your bobbin and make sure that you have plenty of thread in there before we top stitch. Okay, there's our turnout hole sewn up. So get rid of any loose threads. So it's all nice and neat, and make sure that you caught that turnout hole all the way across. Cool. Okay, let's stuff this in there. See how it looks. And get our zipper sitting where it's meant to be. Oh, so cool. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, I'm going to poke the end of this zipper down into the bag so it doesn't get in my way and I don't accidentally top stitch it. And it's clipping again. All the clips. So I'm really going to make sure that I roll that seam down, because I don't want too much of that pink showing up like that. So I want to roll it down and clip it like that. Now, if you used all cotton woven, then you'd be able to give it a hit with the iron and get it sitting exactly where you want it. But I'm not going to risk it. I could iron it from the inside very carefully, but I just don't want to risk hitting that vinyl. So I'm going to just use my fingers and a lot of clips and get it sitting where I want it to sit. And clip all the way around and then take it back over to the sewing machine and do the last bit, which will be top stitching this down into place. And then we'll come back, give it a hit with the iron, and we'll be done. Okay, I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to 4.5. Now, ideally, you'd want to top stitch from the top. So if you're on a domestic machine or a machine with a free arm, wrap the bag around it and do it that way. But for me, it's going to be too hard. So I'm going to stitch from the lining side. I'm going to start up near one of my seams. And I want to be about 1/8 of an inch if I can, all the way around. Back stitch a little bit. Now I need these handles folded down when I get to the handles. I don't want to sew over them. So fold the handle right down out of the way. And try not to let this lining pucker. And just carefully make my way all the way around. We're almost there. And back stitch a little. Whew. Done. Okay, there she is. I've given her a bit of a hit with the iron and got all those seams sitting nicely, and I am just loving this one. So gorgeous. I love these colors. So again, these really bright fabrics are from Chula Pink. So you can find that designer online. And then we have the pocket in the back, and then the zipper, and open that up. And the reason we have that nice long tail is it helps the bag open really wide so we can see all those other cool colors. Okay, thanks so much for coming along with me today, peeps. If you are making it, then good luck and let me know how you go. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I will get back to you. And if you watch just for funsies, my funsies people, then thank you so much for coming along for the ride. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. I'm getting very close to unlocking my first YouTube tier, which means that I'll be able to have a YouTube shop, which would be really cool because I have so many good ideas of what I can put in my shop. And I'll also be putting some of my bags in the shop. So if you want me to get there, if you want to buy one of my bags, then watch my videos. I need more watch hours. I've got enough subscribers for that first tier, not for the second tier, so keep subscribing. But yeah, the watch hours I need to get up, and then I can have a shop, which is so exciting. So thank you all so much for your support. I couldn't have done it, literally couldn't have done it without you. Without you, I would just be sitting in my sewing room talking to my pets all day. So thank you. Okay, peeps, I'm off to the pub. Have a great day and see you next time. Remember, it's only fabric. We can always buy more. Bye. Bugger.